Episode 310, Financial Insecurity. Chris immediately sprang to attention. The mention of Alex's name had hit him like a thunderbolt. He looked over his shoulder. The girl was walking away from him out of the airport. His mind was racing with questions. I wonder how she knows him, he thought. Maybe she's an old flame. Anyway, she might be useful. He had to think fast. Based on what he had heard of her mutterings, he figured that she might have money troubles. It was even possible that she was after Alex for his money. If he was right, then he had a perfect opening. He took off his watch and rushed after her. It was a long shot, but it might work. When he caught up to her, he tapped her on the shoulder. She flung around with an annoyed expression on her face, but it softened when she saw him. This'll be easy, Chris thought with increased confidence. He had seen that look on enough young women to know what it meant. He held up the watch to her face and smiled. "Excuse me, miss," he said politely. "I think this fell out of your handbag." At the sight of the watch, her eyes brightened even more. Whoever she was, she recognized an expensive watch when she saw one. "Thank you," she said. "It's a gift from my boyfriend. I don't know what I would have done if I had lost it." She took the watch from him and quickly stuffed it into her handbag. "I'm always glad to return things to their rightful owners," Chris said. He looked at her with concealed scorn. He had sized her up as greedy, and it had paid off. It was usually a safe bet. And it's a good thing people are greedy, he thought. It makes them so much easier to exploit. "Not that I believe in fate," he told her, "but I have some time to kill, and now we've run into each other. Would you like to have dinner with me? My treat." "Of course," she answered. She seemed delighted at the offer. Chris got a taxi for them, and he took her to a luxurious restaurant in downtown Baltimore. He ordered the most expensive dishes on the menu for them, along with a bottle of the best French wine. It was all very expensive, and he made sure that she noticed. When they had ordered, he turned his full attention to her. "Tell me about yourself," he said and laughed. "I don't even know your name yet." "My name is Melissa," she answered. "I'm 22 years old, and I don't actually have a boyfriend. That watch is for my father." Her full name was Melissa Kennedy. The same Melissa Kennedy who had been part of the Dream Chasers girl group, who had nearly caused Debbie's death at the hands of Lou Rourke. After Alex had killed Lou at the Azalea guest house, he had chosen to spare her. But Melissa had not felt safe. She had fled New York for fear of her life. When she had felt that enough time had passed, she had come back to look for Alex. As scared as she had been, she still wanted Alex. He was an Ambrose, and he had Sam Woodsworth and Ken Stokes working for him. If she could only have him, her life would be filled with luxury and comfort. And no matter what had happened between them, he had still spared her life. In her mind, it meant that he must care for her. When she had come back to New York, Alex had already gone to Washington, D.C. to look for Debbie. She couldn't find him. Nobody at Preston University even seemed to know who he was. Melissa then went to meet with Sam, who had only told her that he was in Washington, D.C. She went there immediately, but she couldn't find him there either. She spent months looking for him, and she used up all her money. She was desperate. She needed money to keep looking, so she had flown to Baltimore to get a job as a singer. That was how she ended up on the same flight as Alex, and how she had bumped into Chris at the airport. Of course, Chris knew none of this. All he saw was a materialistic little rich girl who probably enjoyed making guys trip all over themselves to please her. "I can't believe it," he said mischievously. "How could you possibly be single? You must have dozens of guys chasing you. Like me, perhaps. I'm single too, but you'd expect that of me. Ha, I wouldn't stand a chance." He flashed his eyes knowingly at her. From the reaction on her face, he could tell that his words had the precise effect he had hoped for. "I guess I have high standards," she said. "I'm not interested in ordinary guys." She paused and stared pensively into the table. "I used to see someone," she continued. "He was from a very important family, the Ambroses. Have you heard of them? They have the richest men in New York and Chicago working for them." She leaned forward and continued in a gleeful whisper. "And I've seen him shoot a man like it was nothing. His family's a force of nature. What do you think about that? He chased me desperately, bought me cars and diamonds, but I still turned him down." Chris sat silent and listened as she spoke. Everything was falling into place. "So Alex is an Ambrose," he thought. "It is as I suspected." Chris had always suspected that Alex was from a very rich family. It would have explained many of the things he had been able to do, but Chris still had his doubts. If Alex was an Ambrose, it seemed impossible that he would stoop to the level of working as a security guard at a university, even if his family had cut him off. There was just one more answer he needed to confirm his suspicions. "Sounds like quite a guy," he said. "What was his name?" "Alex," Melissa answered indifferently. There it is, Chris thought. His suspicions had been confirmed beyond any doubt. "Are you here in Baltimore to look for him?" Chris asked and smiled derisively. His polite veneer was cracking. "I have to warn you, you might be very disappointed." She stared at him incredulously. "Why? Do you know where he is?" she asked. "Can you take me to him?" At the thought of finding Alex, her flirtatious behavior toward Chris had all but evaporated. "If you really want to see him, I'll take you to him," Chris said. "After we've eaten." The food was served, and they ate quickly. Melissa was in a terrible hurry to see Alex, and Chris was thirsty for his planned revenge. When they had finished, he called a taxi and took her to Johns Hopkins. "What did you bring me here for?" Melissa asked when they stopped outside the university. "Does Alex go here now?" "You'll see," Chris answered. They got out of the taxi, and he led her toward the residential building. As they approached the door, Chris stopped her and dragged her off the road. They hid behind the corner of a building, and he pointed at the security guard who was standing outside the main entrance. "That's Alex," he told her. Melissa scoffed, but then she looked a little closer. The man standing guard outside the residential building was Alex. Her mind was spinning. "It's impossible," she thought. "Why would Alex be working here as a security guard? He's rich." At this time, 2 teachers came out of the building and started chatting with Alex. In the crisp, windless night, Melissa and Chris picked up their words quite easily. "You know, we're so lucky to have such a capable young man here to protect us," one of the teachers said and laughed. "I do hope the university treats you well enough." Alex laughed. "I can't complain. Sure, it's a modest job for modest pay, but I get somewhere to live. And it's peaceful. As far as I can tell, I'm almost pointless." They all laughed. Melissa was shocked at what she had heard. Why would Alex take such a humble job? She felt as if she was dreaming. Chris saw the puzzlement and disappointment on her face. He decided to make his move. "You know, you were right that Alex used to be someone, but his family cut him off. He's perfectly normal now, meaning he's poor and has no future. His family doesn't care what happens to him." "He's a loser," Melissa murmured bitterly. "You still want to talk to him?" Chris said with a smirk on his face. "He has a job at least. Probably a bike, too. Maybe you can live together in his cozy dorm room." "No!" Melissa exclaimed. From what she had just seen, Alex might as well be dead to her. "I don't want to see him. It's pointless." "Then let's go," Chris said. "I think we've seen enough sadness and poverty for one evening." He took Melissa's hand and led her off campus. When they came out onto the main street, they saw that a black Mercedes-Benz was parked and waiting for them. When Melissa saw the fancy car, her eyes sparkled with delight. "Melissa, please get in," Chris told her as the driver opened the door for them. "I've had a good time tonight. Would you like to have a final drink at my place?" Melissa nodded enthusiastically. She could hardly believe her luck. Just as one door had closed to her, another had opened. She got into the car. When she had gotten into the car, she took out her phone and Googled Chris's name. She immediately found out that he was a Stedman of Baltimore. He was the heir to one of the most influential families in the city. If she could land him, she would be set for life. Melissa pulled out all the stops. As he got into the car and sat down, she winked at him and stroked his thigh with her hand. Then she unbuttoned a button on her blouse, pretending she was warm. Chris smiled knowingly at her. On the inside, he was filled with contempt. To him, she was nothing but another snobby, entitled brat who would do anything for money. He resented her. But she fit perfectly into his newly hatched plan. "Melissa," he said affectionately as he took her hand, "I know we've only just met, but I think I'm starting to really like you. I had a good time at dinner. I was hoping that we could start seeing more of each other." Melissa was overjoyed. Her magic had worked even faster than she had thought, and Chris was already hooked. She agreed enthusiastically. "Yes, of course," she exclaimed. "I know I was a little distracted at dinner, but I really like you too. Of course I want to see you again." She leaned toward him and rested her head against his chest. Chris held her tightly, but in his heart, he felt nothing but disdain for her. It turned out she wasn't just a gold digger, she was stupid and naive as well. "Driver," he called out, "we're not going home. Take us to the hotel."